Unlike office workers, kitchen crew in the F&B business rarely have time to sit down for a meal together. But it's different at this restaurant.
Today I'm joining my friends at the 52-year-old King and Key for their family meal, which is a daily tradition for their staff.
For at least 3 decades, even during busy festive periods, staff can count on having a proper 45-minute lunch break.
其实就是我们个人的时间嘛，这段时间放下很多工作的一些压力，而去交谈，
培养那种感情。
I definitely see the value of having a dedicated time set aside in a working day to build relationships with those you work with. And for office workers in Singapore, lunch plays very much the same role.
So when the pandemic hit, it upended an important source of social connection for many, the office lunch. A survey of more than 1,000 office workers by food delivery company Deliveroo found that 80% wished to eat together with their colleagues. 73% felt eating together would make them happier and more productive. Eating together is such a natural and irreplaceable part of daily social interactions across cultures, it even has a name: commensality, the act of eating together. What is it about eating together that connects us? In this episode, I will show you what the science tells us.
The closer you are, the tighter the overlap.
And how some nations are wielding that knowledge as a weapon to gain friends and influence.
For ambassadors, a successful dinner is not just the food.
Singaporeans love our food. But what we don't know so well is that many of these dishes came to us in Singapore through early migrants from all around Asia.
While we tend to think of the food we have in Singapore in broad strokes, Malay, Chinese, Indian, or Eurasian, each and every ethnic dish carries different influences from the geographic regions they hail from. Tony Boy, food blogger and food history enthusiast, has asked to meet at this hawker center.
Hello, 给我2碗.
To tell me about a dish that has its roots in bringing together communities.
You know, this dish is nearly 2,000 years old.
2,000 years old.
Yeah. You know, the Hakka people, they actually come from the Yellow River Valley in the middle of China. It's today's Henan province. Most of them come from Henan province.
Yes,
Yeah.
literally Henan.
South of the Yellow River.
River.
So about 1,700 years ago, the northern nomadic tribes invaded China.
Yes.
And actually occupied the river valley. So the Hakka people started to move south.
As a result of strife, the Hakka people kept moving south for over a millennia. Altogether, the Hakkas moved in 4 migration waves until they made it to the southern coast of China in the 1850s. The 5th wave lasted till the early 20th century, when many Hakka left China after the Opium War.
Some of them came to British Malaya, which Singapore was part of. And today there are about 200,000 Hakka people in Singapore. And they brought to us their cuisine. Lei cha.
What is so particular about Lei Cha Fan as a dish? It's always served in these 2 components, right?
Lei cha always have this part, the rice, and then on top there's a blanket of different vegetables, tofu, and then there's nuts.
When you say blanket, right, you mean it really must cover the whole surface, right?
It is always presented this way. You cannot see the rice until you dig into it.
Okay, okay.
And then there is the tea component.
Yes.
Now the tea is like a green tea. It is made of fragrant, aromatic vegetables. Lei cha is quite a complicated dish.
Complicated dish.
To gather the ingredients
Yeah.
takes a bit of effort. You need to get the different vegetables. There are at least 10. Then preparing it is at another method. Usually, they will recruit all the family members.
All the little hands,
all the heads.
Okay.
And then you say, if you can, you get the neighbors. Better still, you get your extended family, all the cousins, you know.
It sounds like this is one of those dishes where there's no point making small amounts.
Exactly. It has to be made together.
Yeah.
And it has to be eaten together. And then during this time, you will talk. And then through this, it is building a community. The community gets together, work together, cook together, eat together, and then they will update each other on what is happening in their little part of Singapore. I will be eating this like eating curry. I will pour this in.
So when you say they localize the dish, they use local components, does that mean that they're getting these from the market or they're growing some of these things themselves?
Most people today will get it from the market. But I know of someone who actually has a garden where she and her neighbors plant all these different kinds of
All the things
herbs.
needed for the paste and the
Exactly.
vegetables.
Does Lei Cha or Thunder Tea Rice still connect people today?
I see all sorts of vegetables that I ate in the Lei Cha just a while ago. I see cai xing. I've got kai lan also. Also gonna steal a bite of this cai xing. Ooh.
Good morning.
Oh, hi.
Is it Ming?
Yes, my name is Ming. I'm not stealing vegetables. I'm just making sure that they are ready for harvest. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, yes, the veggies actually are ready for harvest. Welcome to the garden. We had this piece of land since 2008. It is for all the residents here and then also the neighborhood nearby.
Angel, Lei Cha is one of those dishes, right, that takes a lot of effort. I see a lot of chopped items, diced things, the vegetables are always cut up. To me, this involves a lot of people and a lot of effort. What does Lei Cha mean for you?
For myself, okay, we're always looking forward to the harvest day and then also to enjoy the meal together, especially with my neighbors. When I tell them that my vegetables are ready for harvest, okay, I will tell them that, hey, so and so, this day, we are going to cook Lei Cha. And then they're all ready.
Ahead of a Lei Cha meal, volunteers to harvest the vegetables are marshaled via a WhatsApp group made out of some 50 members from the neighborhood. The work itself is spread over 3 days, with young and old coming together to gather the vegetables that go into Angel's version of Lei Cha.
These are the greens we harvested from the garden, the chai xin, the kai lan.
Kai lan and the mustard
Besides that, we have sayur manis, then we have wing beans, bean. And then, not to be missed, is the chai po.
Chai po.
Chai po
Okay.
is a musk.
So, what can I help you start with first?
Okay, we will chop all to smaller pieces, then we stir fry the veg.
Angel usually has her neighbors over to help, but today I'm her only assistant. I've been warned the making of Lei Cha is a massive operation. Now I'm finding out just how much work it takes.
Wow, that smells great.
After hours under the sun and in the kitchen, the dish that literally takes a tribe to prepare was finally ready for communal feasting.
It means a lot to you guys, more than just a meal, right?
Yeah, because everyone is involved in cutting, engender the kampong spirit that we actually lost it long time ago.
The fact that we step out of the house, the fact that we get together, that we meet people that we naturally don't.
For me, it's been absolutely amazing. Angel's the first one who said to me, whenever you want to come to the garden, come to the garden. Bring the children. And for me, the big thing is that we've all come together over it.
The modern savvy restaurant serves a mix of individual plates as well as sharing platters like these. And I find that these are really popular for groups, even if it means negotiating and compromising over who orders what. Now the net result is you'll be able to order a multitude of dishes and enjoy them, more dishes than you would have if you ordered them individually for yourself. Hi ladies, enjoy your sharing platters.
And that reminds me of yet another dish that is often enjoyed communal style, this time from Indonesia. Surya Kencana Omar is a scholar of Javanese cultural heritage. He is one of 89,000 ethnic Javanese in Singapore.
Hey, coming.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Hi,
Welcome to
Surya.
my place. Hi, Ming.
My nose is leading me into the kitchen.
This meal is known in Singapore as Malaysia as Nasi Ambang. Sometimes they refer to it as its predecessor kind of dish called Nasi Tumpeng. Quite a number of people ask me, they want authentic Nasi Ambang. What are the dishes? There is no fixed dish or side dishes.
What goes into Nasi Ambang varies from family to family.
Like for today's, my sister asked me, the rendang, which type of rendang I want. So I told her, let's do something that our late mother always tend to do.
I'm gonna lift it up because it is a hefty amount of food. I wonder if you guys can see this. So yeah, when you look at this, what do you immediately think of?
Remembering the many hands coming in to take up portions of the food brings back memory, especially when the rule for the day is to finish it. Pushing the fish here, you eat this, you eat that. I prefer the chicken, I prefer the meat. So there's a lot of exchange and interaction.
Very communal.
It allows that kind of intimacy of conversation. Right? You have to talk because you're going to ask, pass me that.
These are good memories, huh?
Yeah, these are good memories.
Another characteristic of Nasi Ambang is that it's typically served on a large round platter in Singapore and Malaysia, a setup to encourage community and togetherness among those sharing in the meal.
How would a community come together traditionally to eat this dish?
In the past, when we were much more communal, we tend to settle here somewhere around the same area.
Yes.
So it is the main family or the immediate family that will be gathering much earlier to prepare the men folk who prepare the space. Because we are living in GB, we have to remove the furniture, either bring it outside, run the corridors and give space to everybody be sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
We have roll-up mats. And then the women tend to be busy in the kitchen from the morning due to the number of dishes. You're cooking for so many people. The idea of gathering and community even comes before the ritual itself. From the cooking, preparation, and even before that, inviting people to come over. This rendang is from my mother's recipe. It is always during this communal cooking that you start to have the apprenticeship for the next generation to come and help.
That's very true. It is through these experiences and this connection from passing knowledge from experienced members of the community down to newer members that these dishes remain relevant, right?
Yes, and it is because it forms part of a communal experience. Even when we don't consume it as part of the communal experience, it brings about that nostalgia.
Bye, Surya. Thank you. I love the idea of this. Taking some of this food back to share with those who weren't at the table. And I'm sure that as I share this box of Nasi Ambang together with my family, they too will feel connected to that communal meal experience that I just had.
But what is it about the experience of sharing food that connects us? When it comes to food, as we've seen with Lei Cha and Nasi Ambang, it definitely seems it's better to eat with others than to eat alone.
So what I want to know is, what is it about the actual act of sharing food that fosters closeness and helps people feel connected to each other?
So I've asked social and organizational psychologist Victor Xie to join me for breakfast and tell me a bit more about how commensality works.
A 2017 study from University of Chicago found that eating the same foods led to greater trust and cooperation. I thought that was quite remarkable.
A A series of experiments conducted by researchers from the American University found that the consumption of similar foods facilitates a sense of closeness and trust, even between adults who don't know each other. The researchers concluded that in consuming similar food, people can immediately begin to feel camaraderie and develop a bond, leading to smoother transactions from the start.
So this trust extends beyond just the initial feeling, but it goes into subsequent actions also.
In many subtle ways, yes.
Interesting. So eating similar things will evoke some sort of similar response in people.
We do that on a day-to-day basis, right? So if someone folded their arms, you might, unconsciously do it as well. So that's behavioral mimicry. So if we sit down and we eat with somebody, sometimes we do those things as well, right? If someone's going to have a sip of water, we might do so as well.
Yeah. Especially if you don't know that person that well, or you're trying to be agreeable in general, right?
So in the experiment, they did it quite subtly. They actually had people sit together and they were given either sweet food or savory food. And just being assigned to the same sweet food led people to be more trusting. So product reviews that were given by people who eat similar food were rated to be more trustworthy.
So, eating the same foods can build trust, even between strangers. I want to test this out with Victor's help, so we're dropping in on Krishna's free meals, a charity serving more than 800 breakfasts and 700 lunches a day to migrant workers. To see if the bonding effect of food holds true here in Singapore, we're going to carry out the experiment between Singaporeans and migrant workers who don't know each other.
What is the form of this experiment of this year?
Yeah, I think we'll do a between groups experiment. So you might pair the volunteers with the migrant worker. Then they'll eat similar foods. They'll eat the same foods actually.
Okay.
I'm a bit concerned about people talking and sort of building bonds through that way. So maybe what we might do is we'll have them eat without talking to each other.
So how do you measure this at the end of the experiment?
I think we'll need a visual scale. That sort of scores the extent to which you feel connected to the other person. So there's a series of overlapping circles. The closer you are, the tighter the overlap. So that's one. But we're also interested in how someone might feel about the community.
The inclusion of community in the self scale measures how much one feels connected to the larger community.
Which is really the same, but instead of other, it will be community.
Is there space for me to take part in this experiment?
Yes, definitely, yes.
Hi everyone, welcome to Krishna's Free Meals. You're going to have a meal. Vela is going to be paired with Ming. Jasmine is going to be paired with Mr. Veera. And you're going to eat in silence. You can't talk to each other.
After Latha explains the rules, we all dig into the same delicious vegetarian meal. I've been paired up with Valatham, a bus driver from Malaysia, and I'm finding it more than a little awkward to sit and eat without talking to my companion. Once we're done, we fill out the scale that will tell us if eating a similar meal has helped us connect with one another.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Sia, I see a whole bunch of results here. What am I looking at?
Well, we're trying to replicate a past study that found that the eating of similar foods led to greater connectedness. So for our study, if they were connected, we would see circles that are more overlapping.
This is my scorecard, and this is Vala's scorecard.
We had never met each other in our lives, right? So we were, I say, three, four, and very similar.
So much better than you would expect two separate strangers. So I think just looking at this, it does suggest that what your experience of that connectedness really plays out in the ratings as well. And I think for our experiment, we took out one important ingredient of a meal, which is the conversation, because we wanted to make sure it was just the food.
The experiment was small and by no means scientifically rigorous, but it did hint at the powerful tool that food can be, such that an act of sharing a meal can help break down walls. Because food not only has the innate ability to build trust, it has formed the backdrop to many pivotal moments in global political history.
And who can forget the 2018 summit between former US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held here at the Capella, Singapore on Sentosa Island. Not only was their bilateral meeting held in this very room scrutinized by political watchers, the subsequent working lunch held at a venue just below us was also dissected for things like hidden messages and code in the food that they served.
I've attempted to recreate some of the dishes from the Trump-Kim lunch meeting by studying the menu. And I'm serving it to sociologist Kelvin Low, who specializes in what he calls gastro-political encounters, when food plays a role in politics.
Professor Kelvin Low, there is a stuffed cucumber. This is called an oiseong. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is a Korean dish. And then we've got sweet and sour pork together with some yangzhou fried rice, braised short rib with a red wine sauce, together with some steamed broccolini and potatoes dauphinois. And then for desserts, we have vanilla ice cream with a cherry coulis, as well as a pastry filled with cream known as a trapezian.
What we have here is an interesting range of dishes, but as to what they represent or signify, do you want to make a guess first?
Everything here, by and large, does not seem extravagant. There's nothing that's too over the top. One thing I'm very tickled by is the choice of short rib. It is a notoriously tough cut of beef, but when cooked sufficiently and properly, it becomes extremely tender, very yielding, very pliable. Vanilla ice cream with cherry coulis. This is tried and tested. There's nothing offensive about this.
So if you think about who's the host and who's the guest, it's quite clear that both Trump and Kim are the guests, and Singapore becomes the host country. So if you look at the stuffed Korean cucumber, for instance, it could represent ethnicity, it comes with a particular history, and word has it that it's actually a dish that can be traced back to the Joseon dynasty of the 1300s. So that probably is related to how this summit, is catering, of course, to Kim as one of the important guests.
I know that Trump likes ice cream. He's mentioned that, of course, he likes burgers and his junk food, right? So sort of a generic Western sort of cooked meat, and then European and maybe an American style dessert. Why so much fixation on what they ate?
I guess it goes back to all the way when food is always a part and parcel of diplomatic exchanges across history and also in contemporary times. Take, for instance, if you look at 1975, here I'm talking about the example of durian diplomacy. That was where the then Thailand Prime Minister, right? So he visited Beijing together with an entourage of about 160 delegates, and he also brought with him 200 durians, along with Thai beer. After this gesture, right, of what has now been labeled as durian diplomacy, we learned that in the early 2000s, China allows only Thailand to export their durians as they are, as compared to other exporters such as Indonesia or Malaysia. I'll just give another example. So we know, because the Queen of Malaysia has taken to social media to share that she's enjoyed a nice enduring sambal friendship with the late Lee Kuan Yew, for which she would deliver canisters of sambal to him and his family. And that act was also to be reciprocated. So he was asking her, now what can I give in exchange? So, and that's where that relationship begins. Beyond and above the public arena of politics and diplomacy comes also an oblique relationship, where there is a tangential connection made through food as a mediator.
Prof. Low, overall, would you consider this an example of a successful diplomatic meal?
So at least for this summit that took place about 4 years ago, there was continuity, right? One being that after the meal, they continue to discuss with one another, each other, and I think the closure of that summit was where they arrived at signing a joint statement about what to do next. And then with further discussions back and forth, saw how the next summit transpired a year later that was to be held in Hanoi in Vietnam. This is what food brings to the table.
Perhaps one of the most talked about was when the 37th United States President Richard Nixon made a high-stakes visit to China to open up relations after years of diplomatic estrangement. To prepare for his trip, Nixon studied Chinese food and dining customs, and even practiced using chopsticks. Dubbed Nixon's chopstick diplomacy, the visit of 1972 was lauded as a diplomatic success, and some say contributed to his re-election as president that same year. Then there was the sushi diplomacy of more recent times, where Barack Obama was famously hosted by then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at a legendary sushi restaurant Sukiyabashi Jiro in Tokyo. Taking place on a high-profile 2014 Asia trip, the bonding of the two world leaders over sushi, a food synonymous with Japan and in the world's best sushi restaurant, was seen as a public declaration of the two allies' close personal ties.
So I've learned how food plays a key diplomatic role on the world stage. And that makes me curious about the role Singapore food plays in our country's diplomatic outreach. Behind closed doors, what local foods have helped us to smoothen negotiations and close important deals? I'm here to ask one of Singapore's most prominent diplomats.
Hosting senior officials to meals at her home was all in a day's work for Professor Chan Hing Chi, Singapore's longest-serving ambassador to the United States. Whether it was hosting high-level policymakers or ASEAN counterparts, a lunch for a dozen guests or a dinner for 20, Prof Chan, a self-described stickler for details, personally oversaw everything.
I love to host dinners at home because when you host a dinner at home rather than in a restaurant, it creates a stronger friendship.
Were these sort of on a personal capacity or were they official gatherings?
Oh, they were official. I did a lot of official meals.
The number of secrets this guy has heard, huh?
Well, and gossip. The point about Singapore is that our meals are good places for conversations. We discuss ideas, issues, and we connect people together. And when our guests leave the house, they would have said, gosh, it was an interesting conversation. And the food was good too, mine.
So being that connector, that glue, that binding agent was always the intention of some of these meals, I'm guessing?
Yes. If you just meet people and just talk and do business talk,
it's very surface level.
It's very transactional. Whereas if you do your discussions, you can do your deals over a meal, it softens it.
What were the goals for some of these meals?
Most of the time at these diplomatic meals, one, there's an exchange of information. Two, you want to close a deal or push a deal further. Three, you just want to get to know the other side better.
Prof Chan worked in Washington for 16 years. Whenever Singapore delegates came to visit, she would serve comfort food like braised duck and porridge. When hosting Southeast Asian diplomats, she served a homegrown celebrity dish, chili crab, to affirm the bonds and solidarity between regional neighbors. And for guests less familiar with Singaporean food, she dialed back on the spice levels and exoticness of the foods with simpler dishes.
Come to the kitchen, Ming. And this is Amy.
Hi.
She is my chef, my helper, everything. We are making a grilled eggplant salad, which is Cambodian.
Ambassador Chan, this is a Cambodian dish. Now, how do you decide what to serve in these meals?
Well, I sort of said to myself right at the start, we are going to serve, the cuisine of Singapore, Chinese, Malay, Indian. But then I said, we should also serve Southeast Asian dishes because we are part of ASEAN. And Singapore is very ASEAN conscious.
Do you think that addition of ASEAN food helped to position us a little bit better as the gateway to the rest of Southeast Asia?
I hope so. A lot of our conversations have to do with ASEAN.
Were there spicy conversations that you had around a table like this?
Sometimes I had a combination of officials and think tankers, researchers, and academics would just speak. It could be a discussion about something that's happening, and the temperature could rise. So what do? You just make sure that they are not spluttering over too spicy chicken then,
So the point they can't discuss anything, right?
Right.
As you are gesticulating, I'm thinking about some of my favorite local foods like crab, right?
I'm often asked, do I serve chili crab? Now, I have served Ming chili crab to the small group of the Indonesian, Malaysian, Brunei, Singapore ambassadors.
And they were fine, I guess.
They happily tucked in, and one was just perspiring. He said, oh, it's so hot, but I love it, I love it. And it broke down a lot of barriers. And I think we bonded.
Wouldn't you say that that is the effect of using food as a little stepping stone to get to that point of common understanding?
For ambassadors, and certainly for me in the Singapore residence, a successful dinner is not just the food. A successful dinner is successful because you have really, the most important thing, selected the right guests, invited the right guests that work together, they gel together. Have a cozy space, the lighting matters. That's why we look at all those elements, yeah.
That was really enlightening. Now, whilst food might not be able to single-handedly solve a diplomatic conflict or a disagreement, it's still a really useful tool and sweetener in the hands of a good diplomat. And as Ambassador Chan mentioned, Singapore food is but part of the wider culinary repertoire of Southeast Asia, which brings to mind one of my favorite cuisines.
I may be a chef, but I didn't go to culinary school. Instead, I majored in Southeast Asian studies in university. More specifically, I studied all things Thai.
อันนี้อะไรนะ
อันนี้ไส้กรอกค่ะ
Thai culture fascinates me. The food, the history, the language.
สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
รับอะไรดีคะ
ผัดไทยนะ
ค่ะผัดไทยนะคะ
ผัดไทยกุ้งพิเศษ
ค่ะ
แต่ว่าไม่ใส่พริกนะกินเผ็ดมาได้นะ
ขอบคุณมากค่ะ
Thank you very much.
Thank you ขอบคุณค่ะ
So I haven't been able to travel to Thailand. I do the next best thing. I come to Little Thailand here in Golden Mile Complex. Here, many of the store owners speak Thai and they sell all the tasty Thai things that you'll find. Street food, snacks. It's very easy to imagine that I've zipped off to Thailand.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Oh,
มาแล้ว
สวัสดีครั
ค่ะ
บ
ผัดไทยค่ะ
Pad Thai. Here you can also find a delicious plate of Pad Thai. And this dish needs no introduction. It is one of the most recognizable Thai dishes on the planet. And that didn't happen by accident.
This Thai dish can be found everywhere from Moscow to Beijing to the Jasper National Park in Canada, and is widely thought to represent Thai cuisine. But the origins of this dish are more political than culinary. As part of Thai Prime Minister Plek Thibul Songkram's initiatives to establish a national identity and unite a diverse nation in the 1930s, he he rolled out cultural mandates to encourage a strong Thai culture, including Thaifying food with non-Thai origins. To fight a rice shortage during World War II, noodles were promoted as a staple because one bowl of rice could make 2 plates of noodles. But because noodles were considered Chinese, cooks were pressured to include Thai flavors in order to make them more Thai. Out of that, Pad Thai was born. But that only explains half the story of how Pad Thai came to be. The other half is how Pad Thai came to be known around the world. And this arose from Thailand's efforts in the early noughties to boost its economy through tourism by increasing the popularity of Thai food, including Pad Thai, overseas.
Out of this came Thai Select, a program launched in 1998 by the Thai Ministry of Commerce to introduce Thai culture to the world through its food. And I've come to this Thai Select restaurant to find out more. How many restaurants in Singapore have this certification?
With the Thai Select Premier, which is the more prestigious award, there's only 4 Thai restaurants in Singapore.
Only 4?
Only 4. Well, it's a lot of years of practice for the chefs to be able to reach a certain level of food quality to pass the test. The ambassador herself actually came down to visit and tasted the food to make sure that it is up to her level of standard.
The ambassador herself?
Yes. All the recipes are either handed down recipes or recipes that we have perfected ourselves, and it's tasted and get certified by Thai locals who live here themselves.
I'm guessing that means also the ingredients you guys use need to have a certain authenticity about them, right?
Yes, we import them in from Thailand directly.
I love that attention to detail. As someone that enjoys food and works in the food industry, that's a lot of effort. What are you trying to do here?
We're trying to bring people to the country. We're trying to be a front of what people can get when they visit Thailand. If you've never been to Thailand before, it's the gateway to the country. And so if you don't know anything about Thailand, putting it in your mouth, putting a flavor of it in your mouth will make you want to go to that country even more.
It's almost as if that certification shows that you guys are sort of an authentic representation of what you will find in Thailand.
Exactly. We're that advert to get you to buy that ticket, that plane ticket to go to Thailand.
Thai Select is part of a broader gastro-diplomatic push by Thailand that has included the training of Thai chefs for work abroad, supported by special visa arrangements, and the export of Thai food products like sticky rice, fish sauce, and tom yum sauce. The ubiquity of Thai restaurants around the world is a testament to the campaign's success. From 7,500 Thai restaurants outside Thailand in 2005, there are now 15,000 Thai restaurants globally. Tourist arrivals also grew from about 4.5 million in 2008 to almost 40 million in 2019 before the pandemic hit. While food isn't Thailand's only attraction, surveys have shown Thai food is a major draw for tourists.
I've cooked Thai food before, and I don't think you need to be Thai to cook Thai dishes, but you're talking about some measure of authentic quality, right?
Yes, we call it rot mu, which is the taste of your hands.
The rot mu, the taste of the hands.
The taste, which comes after years of practice.
So let's see whether my hands taste similar. Can I try my hand?
Of course.
อันนี้ทุกอันนี้ก่อนแล้วก็ใส่เส้นทีหลัง
โอเคใส่เส้นโอเคทั้งหมดนะไม่ครับนี่พอแล้วครับพอแล้วโอเค I am probably going to be burning this. I'm unfamiliar with this particular wok and this style of cooking. I'm sweating. Chef is probably looking at me like this is ไม่อร่อยนะ I'm so sorry, guys. I'm not in a good place right now, right?
To me, a good plate of pad thai is like an open-ended meal where one can throw on condiments to one's taste. Today, though, I felt like tossing it out the window.
Wow, this is embarrassing. Not a very pretty looking plate at all.
No wrong
It's just no and wrong. ทำไมมะนาวอร่อยอ่ะ
น้ำเยอะครับ
Too sweet, huh?
หัวจะโป๊ะเยอะ
Too much, Chai Po. Chef Chung, can you show me how to do this properly?
that I show you
Perfect Pad Thai มีอะไรนะ
เส้นไม่ขาดน้ำซอสไม่เยอะ แล้วก็หัวจะโป๊ะใส่นิดหน่อยพอประมาณ
Alright, all the things that are different from my I'm deeply impressed that Pad Thai, the dish created to unite all of Thailand together, has made its way around the world, including to Singapore, and in doing so retained a majority of that authentic taste that made it such a good envoy for Thai culture around the world. Which makes me wonder, is there a Singaporean dish that could represent our country in the same way?
Which Singapore food best represents us? Perhaps a good indication would be food that most reminds Singaporeans of home when they're away from home. The San Francisco Bay Area, which includes Silicon Valley, has traditionally been one of the most diverse regions in the United States. It also has the largest community of Singaporeans, around 1,000 by estimates, of any region in the US. This is why I'm calling my friend Elizabeth, a Singaporean who happens to be in San Francisco right now.
Hey Ming!
Hi Liz! I have a question for you, right? How easy is it to find Singaporean food where you're at?
Singaporean food, happy to help. In fact, Singaporean hawker food is having its day in the sun thanks partly to the popularity of Crazy Rich Asians, and a San Francisco newspaper in a 2020 article called it the Singapore Culinary Renaissance. So I actually know a big player in this renaissance and I can go find her.
Emily Lim is a 29-year-old Singaporean who has been resident in California since 2014. When the executive sous chef lost her job at a top restaurant during the lockdown, she started hawker food business Tapao Singapore. And she's going to tell me which Singapore hawker food best connects Singaporeans in a foreign land.
Emily?
Hi!
Great to meet you!
Great to meet you too. Welcome to New Mei Wah.
Thank you.
This is a place where I go to shop for literally everything Singaporean. So
Ooh, it looks like it's got a lot of great stuff. All right, so what do we have here?
Oh, we have Fresno chilies. I know in Singapore we use a different kind of chili, but Fresno's are what's available here, and it's the closest to what we have back home.
Okay. So Emily, what motivated you to start Tapao?
When the pandemic hit, it was kind of hard. We lost our jobs and everybody was missing home. So I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I could kind of meld the two together, sell foods that remind people of home, take them back home because they cannot fly back to Singapore, while making jobs available to the people around me, like immediately, you know, because the food and beverage industry was hit very hard. You had no idea when you were going to go to work again.
Yes.
So I was like, you know what, I'm going to seize the day.
I'm gonna create the work.
I'm going to create the opportunity.
This is a boss lady right here. Singapore represent. Okay. So Emily, how do you make sure the food is authentic?
I do not like mute any flavors or try to adapt it to fit the masses. Because what I'm really trying to do is to represent Singaporean food as much as possible, right? I don't make it less spicy. I don't take out anything. You know, if a hawker dish requires X amount of stuff with this amount of ingredients, I'm gonna sauce it here, trying to make it happen. But I won't replace like bean sprouts or tauge with like Brussels sprouts. You know, that's not local to Singapore.
What dish are we cooking?
Okay, so the big reveal, we're making laksa.
I knew it!
It's so obvious.
Laksa!
Laksa, I feel like, is a great dish that encompasses all the different races that is in Singapore. The rempah, like a spice paste, that's Malay influence. Chilies and noodles, the Chinese use it a lot, as well as the spice mix here, that's Indian influence.
So it's a good representation of all the different cultures.
Yeah, Singapore in a nutshell.
Emily says the one dish that stranded Singaporeans kept going back to her for was laksa. I also learned Emily now has big plans to open a brick-and-mortar hawker food restaurant in San Francisco and make hawker food like laksa wider known.
Ah, yes, there is Karong Laksa. Hi. 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 Order my usual, please. One nice size bowl of Katong Laksa. Okay, thanks.
Back in Singapore, all that talk about laksa has got me craving for one. And I've come here to one of my go-to haunts.
For now though, big plans can wait because I'm about to have my lunch and I'm gonna join Emily and Elizabeth for their laksa dinner.
Oh. 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 Hey!
Hey Liz!
Hi, Ming!
How's it going? How's it going, guys?
It's going good. Look who I'm with. Hey! Hi!
Hey, it's Emily!
And my friend Nicole.
Oh!
Hey, Shining!
I'm also having laksa as it happens, right? Look at that. With my hum and everything. Nice and lemak also. What do you guys think of when you look at laksa?
So when I think of laksa, I just straight up think of Singapore. Like it really transports me back home.
We're all speaking with our mouths full and we're sharing a laksa meal together. How many? 8,000 miles apart. Cheers, guys! Nice bowl of laksa. I'm gonna show you the chap, okay? Look at that chap. Look at that chap. Oh, dripping.
Few would argue that eating is Singapore's national pastime. Some even say obsession. But for a people as taken with food as we are, we've seldom paused to think about all the other ways food plays a role in our lives aside from filling our tummies.
There's something really heartwarming about bonding with fellow Singaporeans over a bowl of laksa. This little bowl of laksa carries with it memories of home that transcend thousands of kilometers to unite and comfort fellow Singaporeans. I've always believed that food is ultimately about people, and more than ever I'm convinced that food has the ability to unite us all.